What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and welcome back to another Pokemon Week challenge sort of thing. This is another suggestion that I got from viewer Fernstar, who has been a regular inspiration. Thank you for that. But they suggested creating a series of regional variants based off of a random Pokemon or any Pokemon. The random part was more specifically to do with the type. So I have here, obviously, the regular Pokemon generator that I use, and my Pokemon type wheel from the FakeMon video that I did the other week. So we will be rolling probably 3 Pokemon, and then 3 types, probably re-rolling if it's the same type as the Pokemon. That's definitely possible. And trying to create essentially like a regional variant based off of this particular typing and all that. So I like making the regional variants, and I'm curious to see how this will actually turn out. So let's just get right into it and roll our Pokemon for this week. And a boop. Crystal. Okay, I like Crystal. Crystal's cute. It is a newer Pokemon that I feel like has gotten a little bit more love and attention. I love the sediment layers on its shell. I think that that's super cool. So I'm curious, what is it? Is it just a rock type, or is it rock ground, or just a ground type? I don't remember. But okay. So now for our friend here, we will roll their type, which will be ice. Ice. I think that I can work with that, actually. Okay. Alright, so we have our first variant, a Crystal plus Ice, which I feel like I could definitely do with some, like, glaciers. How they kind of build up over, like, years and years and years of ice and snowfall. So, okay. And our next Pokemon is going to be... Place the battery pack. Sorry about that, my camera died. Which is weird, because the battery pack is a dummy battery. Hopefully everything's okay. Minor technical difficulties for a second. Okay. Our next selection is going to be a Boop. Glammeow. Alright. That is another Pokemon I'm not, like, familiar with, but that I enjoy. So I will grab you. You are a dark type? Or a normal type. I should look these up to see what they originally are. In case I roll something that is incorrect. Alright. A Boop. You are a... flying type? A flying kitty? I don't know if I would be able to work with that. What would I do with a flying... Maybe something to do with the springy tails, kind of like Spoink, but Spoink isn't a flying type either. I'll give it a shot. Okay. So you are plus flying. Alright. And for our final selection... Boop. Bounsweet. Okay, and that's a grass type. Is that a grass fairy? Or is it not until it becomes like steamy? Or whatever the fully evolved version is. And our final type for the evening, or day, morning probably when you're seeing this, or when it uploads at least. Electric? Electric. Interesting. You know, I think that I could work with that too. Okay, so let me pop you guys down over to clip so you can see this. And we have our selection for this week of our 3 selections. One that makes perfect sense, one that makes 0 sense, and one that makes sense. You know, I could see it, okay? Because this Pokemon I know exists in a situation where it's like it it looks like a berry, and it's often mistaken for one and has to avoid being eaten, right? So it having an electric typing makes sense for it. But the Glameow being flying, that one kind of throws me. Listen, maybe I could do something with the tail. I'd like a little propeller or something at the end of it. I'm curious about it. I kind of wanted to keep it despite the nonsense of it, just because I like the nonsense of it. So I'm not too pressed about it, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So I'm going to think on these for a little while, and I'm going to pop you guys over to Speed Paint Voiceover so you can see what I did find out about these three when we get there. So I'll see you there. First up, we have our Ice-type Crustal. I had a pretty instantly vivid picture of what this variant would look like. You take Crustal and just put an iceberg on their back. I did also take inspiration from a Fiddler Crab and give this variant a singular large ice claw. Maybe it has an ability almost like Ice Cube where the ice breaks in certain circumstances. Maybe instead of defense, it's for offense, like it empowers a certain move that can be used once before breaking. I decided keeping the bug typing would probably be a good idea, really just changing the rock type to ice instead here. I don't know if this has any direct advantages or disadvantages off the top of my head, but it just made sense given this is just an Arctic variant of the same Pokemon. Ice Crustal can be seen in glacial regions, likely having adapted over time to hole up instead of ice shells instead of rocks. Because their icy homes can also float, they spend a lot of time in the water. They expose their right claw to the freezing water and air to build up a shield of ice over it that can be used in battle. A large claw doesn't necessarily evoke any sense of power though, because the ice claw often breaks in battle, meaning that Crustal with a large claw is more likely to be avoiding battles over being a strong fighter. It also slows them down considerably. Due to climate change, they're seen further and further from their polar homes, often looking for cold environments or mountainous regions to live in so their shells don't melt. Next up, we have our flying Glameow. This was always going to be a weird and challenging one. I kind of took the approach of theming this Pokemon around a more steampunk kind of aesthetic. Initially, I considered making it also look like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, but I ultimately just went with a more slight variation on the classic design. The ruff on their neck kind of covers their mouth like a scarf, the fur on their legs kind of resembles wings, and they have a lighter base color with some stripes for a bit of variety. Also goggles, because the biggest difference is their tail, which resembles something like Da Vinci's flying screw, an early concept of the helicopter, essentially. It made sense to me because Glameow's tail normally has that spring-like spiral to it. I could imagine an alternate evolution or just a variation of Perugly that takes it even further to like an airship sort of design. I kind of imagined an almost what-if scenario where there's like some alternate reality or maybe just a really steampunkified region where Pokemon have much more man-made looking at adaptations. Sort of like how the future Paradox Pokemon are all robots. Seriously though, what's up with that? Are they all man-made? What happened to all the Pokemon? Regardless, I thought it could make for a kind of fun approach to the designs and make an excuse for this variant to exist, obviously. The Pokemon in this region take on particularly strange traits that seem man-made. Flying Glameow are descendants of pets brought there that quickly became very light in the higher altitude, or at least that's the theory. Their wide, flattened tails act as a spinning windsail similar to that of the first proposed flying machines. They're also highly intelligent and regularly use this new adaptation to wreak havoc on smaller Pokemon. They aren't quite as damaging of an invasive species as they could be though, as they are exposed to a number of flying predators while in the air. Finally, we have our Electric Bound Suite. I would have put Crustal in the fastest design if this one hadn't also just been the simplest shapes to draw out of the three of them. I figured it would make sense to have the main aspect of this variant less to do with electricity and more to do with flavor. So this is the only variant that also got a name change. Think like Wiglet or Toadstool, except this is still just a variant and not a lookalike. This is Bound Sour. Maybe I could have changed it up a little bit to look like a lime or something instead of like a mangosteen, but I kept most of the aspects of the original look the same beside a constant sour face, spiky leaf, and a lightning bolt-shaped stem. In an area where berries are especially scarce, Bound Sweet faces a lot of turmoil as a Pokemon that so resembles one. This subspecies adapted from Bound Sweet to become especially sour to a shocking degree. They're so sour, their very mood and face are shaped by it, and any surrounding Pokemon can be affected by shockwaves they emit. The juice they produce is also prohibitively sour, but some people who enjoy sour candies and foods swear by it, or use it as a personal challenge. It also induces a feeling similar to pins and needles in one's body, and may lower sensitivity to electric shock. It's too dreadful to most to ever consider that though, and Bound Sour's sour mood makes it difficult to get a hold of. Those are my variants for this week. This is super fun to play around with and try and make some sort of lore/flavor text to explain some of my decisions here. Let me know what you think in the comments and which is your favorite. I'm partial to Ice Crystal, mostly because I think it's also the most probable out of the three. At that though, I'll leave this here and I'll see y'all next time.